A lot of people ask me for the secret to getting rich, and honestly, I tell them the truth, but nobody ever believes me. They want a magic coin or a secret stock tip or some complex algorithm that predicts the future with 100% accuracy. But the reality of building true wealth is as boring as watching paint dry. On a cold Tuesday in the middle of nowhere, actually, it is even more boring than that because at least paint eventually changes color. While the best investment strategies stay exactly the same for 40 years. I was recently looking at the news, and honestly, it feels like the whole world has forgotten how to do basic middle school math. There is this massive trillion-dollar scam currently being exposed, and the people at the top are absolutely panicking right now. They are threatening criminal penalties against anyone who speaks the truth because they say these numbers are classified secrets. Well, I have never been one to be scared of big numbers because numbers do not have a political party or a secret agenda. Numbers just have a cold, hard reality that will eventually bite you in the neck if you try to ignore them for too long. The Trump regime has been claiming that this catastrophic war situation only cost $25 billion, which sounds like a lot until you realize it is a total lie. $25 billion is a lot of damn money. But in the context of a national budget, it is basically a rounding error that they use to distract you. That tiny number only covers the immediate cost of some missiles and the fuel to move troops around a map. It does not factor in the consequential costs of losing control of global trade routes or the destruction of the financial security umbrella. Senator Mark Kelly recently pointed out how shocking it is that the United States has gone so deep into our weapon magazines. He is talking about Tomahawks and Patriot rounds and the interceptor rounds that we use to defend our own borders and our interests abroad. If we entered any other conflict right now, we simply do not have the weapons that we had when this whole mess started, and yet after a year of massive spending, the regime is now demanding an additional $1.5 trillion of your money. They want $1.5 trillion because they have run out of the basic tools of defense, and they are trying to prosecute anyone who says the word bankruptcy. When you take a look at the history of the leader in charge, you see a consistent pattern of going bankrupt over and over and over again. This is a man who has bankrupted casinos and airlines and universities, and now he is doing it to the national treasury on a global scale. Take his latest media company, which lost close to $406 million in a single quarter while making less than $1 million in revenue. That is not a business model. It is a total and utter failure of basic math and logic that would fail. A first grade exam. It reminds me of the story of the reflecting pool in Washington, where they gave a $7 million contract to a pool guy to just paint it blue, painting a leaking pool. Blue does not fix the cracks in the foundation or the algae growing in the stagnant water. It just hides the rot for a few weeks while the sun beats us down and makes the underlying problem grow even faster and more expensive. This is exactly what they are doing with the national budget by trying to paint over the massive debt cracks with even more borrowed money. Economists who actually care about data are now saying the real cost of this instability will be in the trillions and trillions of dollars. The official price tag is a joke because it only covers the hardware lost, and nor is the total collapse of economic opportunity. We have to look at the geopolitical risk, which Federal Reserve economists estimate costs roughly $200 billion in lost employment every single year. We have to look at interest rates because rate cuts are now officially off the table, which cost the average person another $200 billion in output. But the place where it really hits the trillions is the bond market, which is the foundation of the entire global financial system. The interest that the country has to pay back every single year is skyrocketing because the yields are significantly higher than they were meant to be. The stock market has wiped out roughly $3 trillion off valuations because of the uncertainty and the chaos being manufactured. Daily United States markets are lagging behind foreign markets because of these catastrophic decisions and the endless war on global trade. Goldman Sachs projects that income growth will be lower by at least 0.5 percentage points. Because of this friction, the administration is asking for an increase that amounts to roughly $4,000 per American household in hidden costs. That is $4,000 coming out of your potential brokerage account to fund waste and fraud and administrative incompetence. They talk about building golden domes in the sky based on junk science while ignoring the physics of reality and the limits of the treasury. This level of spending is directly affecting your future security and the value of every single hour you spend working at your job. If you are part of this community, are paying attention because you know this affects things like your premiums, and your future healthcare budget directors are being asked for a ballpark figure on the war, and they literally say they do not even have a guess for us. Senator Kelly called the request for $1.5 trillion outrageous, and he is absolute right to be angry about the lack of logic. 5 years ago, the budget was half of what it is now, and they are asking for twice as much for a system that likely will not even function. As promised, the numbers are shocking because the foundations are depleted and the average citizen is less safe today than they were a decade ago. They are trying to replenish these stockpiles, but the experts say it is going to take years and years of your hard-earned tax dollars to fix it. I want Remind you of the gold card scam they were running to program your brain to think that trillions of dollars are just normal numbers. They talk about making $5 trillion from selling pieces of plastic because they are busy stealing actual trillions from the middle class they use. Phrases like diversity is our weakness to distract you while they mismanage $1.5 trillion of the nation's wealth. It is a historic and significant failure of leadership and a total abandonment of the common sense that built this country in the first place. Wealth is not just about what you make in your paycheck. It is about what the system does not take from you to fund its own mistakes. Every dollar wasted on a fake golden dome is a dollar that could have been working for you in a low-cost index fund for the next 30 years. You have to be the system builder for your own life because the people at the top are too busy painting pools to come and save you. They are too busy arguing about culture wars while the actual water leaks into the ground and the foundation of the economy starts to crumble. You need to look at the numbers for yourself and realize that $1 trillion scam is just bad math being forced on a grand scale. Do not let them make you numb to these massive numbers because they represent your labor and your sweat and your precious time on this earth. Every hour you spend working to pay for these mistakes is an hour of your life you will never get back from the universe. The secret to winning in a system that feels rigged is to stay focused on the variables that you can actually control in your own house, control your expenses, and control your debt, and stop buying into the hype of people who make a living out of going bankrupt. The world is incredibly loud and messy right now, but the math of compounding interest stays exactly the same as it was in the days of Benjamin Franklin. It is much easier to fool 1,000 people than it is to convince one person that they have been fooled. For a long time, stop being a consumer of their manufactured chaos and start being a permanent owner of high-quality productive assets. The noise of the news cycle is designed to keep you in a state of fear so that you do not notice the slow theft of your purchasing power. Be the person who looks at the 80-year cycle instead of the 24-hour Twitter feed or the latest screaming headline. Michael Burry saw the seed coming because he looked at the spreadsheets while everyone else was looking at the party invitations. You do not need to be a genius to see that spending $1.5 trillion on a broken system is a recipe for a disaster. You just need to be someone who is willing to be patient and rational while the rest of the world is losing its collective mind. The secret to wealth is having the discipline to do nothing. When doing nothing is the hardest thing in the world to do. Every single time you see a politician promising $1 trillion solution, I want you to check your own wallet and see if it is still there. The biggest risk to your retirement is not a market dip, but the total mismanagement of the currency you use to buy your groceries. The math is simple, but the psychology is where most people fail because they want the excitement of the fight instead of the boredom of the profit. Stay away from the scams and stay away from the hype and stay away from anyone who tells you that debt does not matter anymore. Your future self is counting on you to be the adult in the room right now while the people in power act like children with a stolen credit card. Wealth is a quiet game played by people who know how to say no to things that do not make sense on a calculator. Every single unnecessary purchase is like firing an employee who is supposed to be working for you for the rest of your life. This is the only way to build a life that is actually free from the whims of a regime that does not care about your bank account. I am going to keep calling this out every single week because someone has to speak the language of truth in a room full of lies. Stop giving your attention to the people who profit from your confusion and start giving it to the math that will set you free. The world might be messy and the headlines might be scary, but the path to freedom is paved with logic and patience and index funds. Be the investor who buys the fear and sells the hype and never lets a politician tell you that 2 + 2 = 5. Your brokerage account is your fortress and your savings rate is the wall that protects you from the madness of the crowd. Stay focused on the mission and do not let the $1 trillion distractions pull you away from your own personal financial goals. We are going to get through this together by being smarter and more rational than the people who are trying to lead us into a ditch. You have to understand that the people, the national budget do not have a magic wand. They only have your future earnings. The gap between what they say and what the numbers show is exactly where the opportunity for the rational investor lives. I look at companies like Microsoft and PayPal and Adobe because they have real cash flow and real products that people actually use. Meanwhile, the government is selling you a golden dome that does not exist while charging you $4,000 for the privilege. It is the same kind of logic as buying 3 casinos next to each other and wondering why they are all failing at the same time. You cannot cheat the math of economics forever without the bill eventually coming due with a massive amount of interest. The current defense budget is nearly the same amount as what the rest of the entire world pays for their combined defense. Let that sink into your brain. 4. A second before you decide how to allocate your next $1,000 of savings, we are paying double for a result that Senator Kelly says is shocking and depleted in every single category that matters. This is why I talk about account stacking and building a Tier 4 system for yourself that offers ultimate flexibility. You want a 401k to do the heavy lifting. You want an IRA for the tax strategy, and you want a brokerage account for freedom. The brokerage account is your exit ramp from a system that is currently driving 90 miles an hour toward a concrete wall. Every single dollar you put into that brokerage account is a soldier that is fighting for your freedom from this madness. You do not want to be the person standing there holding a gold card when the music finally stops and the chairs are all gone. You want to be the person sitting on a mountain of productive assets that continue to generate value regardless of who is in the White House. The world belongs to the patient and the rational and the people who can do basic multiplication in their heads. Stop watching the circus and start watching your own balance sheet, because that is the only thing that actually matters for your family. I do not care about the speeches or the Mises or the threats of prosecution against truth-tellers. I care about the fact that your purchasing power is being eroded by people who do not understand the word accountability. The reason I post these videos every single week is to remind you that you have more power than the system wants. You to believe you have the power to say no to the consumerism that funds the waste and the fraud and the global mismanagement. You have the power to stay invested in the long haul and ignore the noise that is designed to make you panic and sell low. The most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind and a heart full of fear when the spreadsheets are telling you to stay calm. Look at the data from the Internal Revenue Service and look at the actual earnings of the companies you own in your portfolio. Everything else is just a story being told by people who want your money and your vote without giving you anything in return. We are seeing a massive shift in how wealth is distributed. And the people who understand the system builder mindset are the ones who will win. Stop worrying about whether you are maxing out a specific account and start worrying about your total savings rate and your logical edge. The math of the Iran war and the defense budget is just a symptom of a much larger problem of avoiding reality. All, but you do not have to participate in that avoidance. You can choose to see the world as it is instead of how you wish it would be. Be like Charlie Munger and look for the mispricings and the irrational behavior and the opportunities to be the adult in the room. The path to $1 million is paved with thousands of small, boring decisions that eventually stack up into a massive results. Do not let $1 trillion headline stop you from making a $100 investment in your own future today. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is right now before the sun goes down. I am proud to stand with the Midas Touch community because we are the ones who are actually paying attention to the details. We are the ones who are not afraid to call out a scam. When we see a no-bid contract for a $7 million paint job, we are the ones who realize that 70 SM3 miss aisles are more important than a gold card with a $5 trillion promise. Keep your eyes on the numbers and keep your heart in the long game and never let them win by making you stop thinking for yourself. The logic is on our side and the math is on our side. And as long as we stay patient, we will eventually come out on top every single unnecessary expense you cut. Today is a step toward a life where you never have to care about a budget hearing again. I see the potential for this community to be the most financially literate group of people on the entire internet. It starts with understanding that $1.5 trillion is your money, and you have every right to ask where it is going. Do not let them silence the conversation with threats of classified briefings or criminal penalties. For telling the truth is out there in the bond yields and the inflation numbers and the cost of a gallon of milk at your local store. Stay boring because boring is profitable. Stay patient because patience is the ultimate edge. Stay rational because logic is your weapon. Stay boring. Stay patient. Peace.